Hey, it's philzGoodMan. A lot of people have been asking me to make a movement guide in Krunker, so here it is. And this guide is going to cover everything from the very basics to the advanced techniques, and I'm going to do everything step by step so you guys can follow along. It did take me a while until making this guide because I was waiting to see if the game's movement would no longer be tied to the game's frame rate, but I think that's okay. However, I have a few disclaimers to make before getting into the video. The first is that I am playing at a very high frame rate. This makes things like sliding and jumping easier, and certain advanced tactics are easier to pull off with high frame rates. That being said, the concepts still apply regardless of what frame rate you're playing at. And I also have a gameplay demonstration of me doing some movement at 60 FPS as well towards the end of the video. Second disclaimer, I think it goes without saying that some advanced players may know most, if not all, of the techniques shown in this video, but I definitely encourage you to watch it anyways, just in case you missed something. New players coming to Krunker, you're in the right place. Movement can seem really hard at first, but if you watch this video and you practice and you're getting at least 144 FPS, I'm very confident that you'll be able to pick it up. I have a keyboard overlay on the screen as well as a mouse cam, so it's easier to follow along, and feel free to slow down the video if you need to. The way that I'm going to approach this is start super simple, because every movement technique builds upon one that you've learned previously. So let's start with the very basics and work our way up. Step 1 is bunny hopping, but before we get to that, I just want you to hit W and just notice how slow you're going. Actually, this is kind of like the max movement speed in the game without using any advanced movement tricks. So you can think about some of these movement tricks in two ways. The first is reducing friction, so reducing the amount of time that you're touching the ground, and the other is building acceleration. So to learn how to bunny hop, all you have to do is continue holding W and jump using the space bar, and right when you hit the ground, press the spacebar again, and you time it such that right when you're landing, you're jumping again, reducing your friction and increasing your acceleration. Notice the sound of the keyboard versus the footstep sound. You want those timed together. You can spam the spacebar, and that will also work for b-hopping, but I think it's better to learn the timing because it builds up to more advanced moves. The next thing to learn is strafing, but what is strafing? So it's when you move diagonally, so holding WA or WD at the same time. Historically, in FPS games, this was an unintended consequence of the forward and left and right movement speeds combining. In Krunker, you can see that it's intentional that strafe speed is faster than moving left and right or forward and back only, because the default setting for strafe speed in Krunker is 1.2. So while you're strafing, you're moving 20% faster. So it may look easy, but you have to adjust the mouse to compensate for the diagonal movement. So just try doing that until you're able to move in a straight line while doing those micro adjustments, and then try doing diagonal right and diagonal left. So WA and WD while compensating using the mouse. And practice until you can easily move around the map with full control while strafing, because this one is going to be used in more advanced movement tricks. Step 3 is to learn slide hopping, but before that, just perform a slide. So the input is space, and then as you're landing, hold shift. There are two things that affect slide distance. The first is FPS, so the higher the FPS, the further the slide. The other thing is speed, so the faster you're going, the further you'll slide as well. Now let's perform a slide hop. So the input is space, hold shift, release shift, space, hold shift, release shift, space, kind of like the timing of a b-hop. There's no exact timing here, and there's a lot of nuance to it. Sometimes you want to do a longer slide. When you're going for pure speed, you want to hold shift late, but when you're trying to dodge a sniper shot, you might hold shift to crouch the entire time that you're in the air. But you can see that we generated a ton of speed, a lot more than just the bunny hopping alone. So the next step is to learn how to change direction while you're sliding. Actually, there's two ways to do this. The first is pre-turning. So if you turn left or right, when you hold shift, you'll actually move in that direction that you're already facing. And the other thing is curve sliding. So that's as you're landing, while you're sliding, you're turning the mouse like left or right, and watch the movement of my hands so you can see how much movement is actually needed to perform this. And notice how I'm curving the slide by turning the mouse as I'm landing. And you know, whether you're pre-turning or you're curve sliding, you kind of combine the two to be able to move fluidly around the map. Now watch how I'm moving around the map without pressing A or D at all. And you can get pretty far in this game if you just hold W and learn how to slide hop while turning. But we're going to make it a little bit harder and integrate strafing into all of this. So next we're going to learn how to perform a strafe while slide hopping. And I'm just going to call it strafe sliding. Sorry if there's already a name out there for this. I don't really know. To do this, simply perform a slide hop while strafing in a diagonal direction opposite the way that you're turning the mouse. So just practice. I like to use the fountain and Sub-Zero and just go in both directions. So right now I'm going diagonal right, WD, while turning left. So next I'm going to show you what it looks like when you strafe at the same direction as you're turning the mouse. And you can see that now I'm moving a lot slower, but also I feel like I have more control. So in the end, don't sweat it too much, but you eventually want to learn how to do it in both directions. So at this point, if you're a beginner, you're going to really want to practice steps 1 through 5. Sleeping on it does help. It does help to build muscle memory when you sleep. But anyways, I'm going to be putting it all together now, so it's kind of like strafe, curve, slide, hopping. And I'm using all these techniques at the same time, and depending on the situation, I'm slightly adjusting. And again, there's no right or wrong way to do this. You don't always want to be moving at max speed. Sometimes you want to slow down. Rather than strafe jumping, you can perform a B hop, or you can let go of the diagonal keys and go straight. Or if you want to gain max speed, then you're turning in the opposite direction of your strafe while sliding. So I've now covered all the basics as well as some of the advanced Krunker movement techniques. But here's a quick move that I found useful, and that's how to perform a 180. So you just go in one direction and then you turn with the mouse, you perform a 180, and you just keep holding W, and when you're landing, you hold shift and you'll move in the opposite direction. And it's easier just to hold W when you do this move instead of holding strafe keys. When it comes to movement while in combat, the best way is playing actual games and just experimenting. There's one thing that I think is worth practicing, however, and that's holding ADS, so aiming down sights, holding right click while you're slide hopping. So notice that you do get a bit slower while you're doing this, but I think it's worth it because it does take time in this game for the ADS accuracy bonus to kick in. So this ensures that you're just always ready. So just practice slide hopping while you're ADS. Also try to practice slide hopping while you're reloading because you have full control while you're doing that. Here's a question that I've been thinking about a lot, and that's like when you should crouch. So to get the max speed, you want to crouch like right before you hit the ground, quickly release, and then jump. And that will reduce your friction and increase your acceleration the most. In reality, I don't think it matters nearly as much, especially if you're playing on high FPS. And if you're going up against a hunter, you're going to want to stay crouched a lot more. So just mess around with it. Just try to mix it up so you're harder to hit while still maintaining a pretty good speed. Now this is how movement looks at 60 FPS. And I wanted to share this with you because there are certain moves that are really easy to do and there are others that are really, really hard to do. Specifically, it's not that hard to perform a slide hop and generate a lot of speed, but it's really, really hard to do curve slides and generally move and maneuver around the map through corners. So I would say that's the greatest disadvantage of playing at 60 FPS. If you are playing on 60 FPS though, it will be harder, but it is still worth it to learn movement techniques. Eventually, who knows, maybe 60 FPS will feel the same as 400 FPS in the future, or maybe you'll get a new PC. So that's why I think it's still worth learning. Next, I want to show you what 144 FPS looks like. This is what I used to play on for a while just because I really liked stable frame rates back then, and also so the movement of my videos wasn't too different from what you guys are using. The good thing about 144 FPS is you can actually do most of the moves, but some of them are just less dramatic. So for example, when you're doing big curve slides around corners, it's a bit harder to pull off, but there's no moves that you can't do at 144 FPS. So there is diminishing returns beyond this point. Personally, if the FPS movement issue cannot be resolved, I think a good compromise would be capping the game at 400 to 600 FPS. Some closing thoughts. I think that Krunker has really interesting movement mechanics. The movement being tied to FPS thing is a really hard issue to solve. I was looking into it, and the reason why strafe jumping works in games like Quake is because the game expects that you're moving at a certain max value. So it thinks that you're going slower than you actually are, and therefore the game thinks that it's able to give you more acceleration. And I'm pretty sure that the mechanics in Krunker work a lot like that. The calculation for this added speed is really complicated, and I believe that it's being processed every time a frame is rendered, so therefore the faster your FPS, the more dramatic this effect is. The problem about normalizing movement across the board is that you risk having the game feel a lot more boring and less nuanced. Kind of reminds me of when Epic Games intentionally decided to implement a shotgun delay, and it was a really clunky, not elegant way of dealing with, advanced tech. So I hope you guys enjoyed this guide on Krunker movement. Again, if you're a beginner, just take it slow, learn every part step by step, and then put it all together. Also, congratulations to the winner of the 10K KR voucher giveaway. The winner is Rusty Freya, so thanks for entering. I'll be emailing you your 10K KR voucher. And thanks everyone for subscribing to my channel, including the long-term subscribers as well as some of the new ones. Thanks to UCD and the collab that we did, the channel has gained a lot of new subs, so welcome to the channel. I hope you guys have a good time. And if you're not subscribed yet, please consider doing so if you like the content that you're seeing.